Imagine a world where we don't need to work, we don't have disease or scarcity. If there are no challenges to overcome, what would give life its value? One idea is that playing games would be a source of value. That games are a uniquely resilient source of value. That's great news for us gamers, isn't it? Spending the entire evening playing Minecraft isn't a waste of time. It's actually giving value to life. But how could that be? How could playing games be the ideal of human existence? I wish I could live in a utopia, but I always think about whether that life would be dull. You know, life in our world is hard, and sometimes I wish life was like Minecraft in the creative mode. A world where nothing can harm us and there's no scarcity. But life ain't like that. Life is like Minecraft in hardcore mode mixed with Dark Souls. We're literally living a plague right now. There are dangers behind every corner. You have to be constantly worried about getting food and just not dying. There's no respawn and things are just hard. When things are good and stable in our lives, we have to work harder so that we have resources for when winter comes.
But winter is coming.
We live like the ants and not like the grasshoppers from Aesop's fables. Most of the time we're working, or at school, or recovering from working. We can't be grasshoppers because grasshoppers don't survive in the hardcore mode. When I think about the ideal life, I think of a utopia. A world where we can have anything, where we don't need to work or be worried about diseases and crime. A world where we all could live like grasshoppers. A world with no dangers. Ever. No problems to overcome. No challenges? I don't know, but a world that's super easy all of the time might get dull. I mean, I remember feeling like that. In school, I couldn't wait for summer to arrive, so I would have no classes, no exams, I would just relax. When summer finally arrived, I would get happy for the first couple of weeks, but then things would get a bit boring. By the end of the summer, I was already tired of doing nothing, and I always hated school. So it's not like I thought this school was a perfect life, it wasn't. A perfect life would be a life without school and without work, but I don't want to be idle. Humans are bizarre creatures, aren't we? A perfect world without challenges would be dull, tedious. It reminds me that scene in Matrix. The agents explained that the first virtual reality they designed was a kind of utopia, but the human mind rejected it. Humans seem to need tragedy and challenges to find meaning in life.
Did you know that the first Matrix was designed to be a perfect human world where none suffered, where everyone would be happy? And it was a disaster. No one would accept the program. Entire crops were lost. I believe that as a species, human beings define their reality through misery and suffering.
But living in utopia doesn't mean we have nothing to do. There is one thing we can do: play games. That's what Bernard Suits argues for in his masterpiece, The Grasshopper. He says that the idea of human existence would be a utopia where playing games would remain a source of value in a world with no need. With no problems of any kind, there would be no need for work. In a true utopia, we would know everything, so there would be no need for scientific research, or historical research, or any kind of research. What about art? Much art is derived from human tragedy and problems. Take any of the movies that have ever won the Oscar for the best motion picture. They all deal with suffering in some form. But in utopia, there would be no tragedy, and so no inspiration for such art. Suits goes so far as to suggest there would be no art whatsoever. What about morality? Suits says there would be no evil in utopia. Nobody would suffer from diseases or catastrophes. Nobody would rob anyone else, because everybody can have anything. If there's no evil, then there's no room for virtuous actions. There would be nobody in need for you to be generous. There would be nobody in danger for you to be brave and protect. In utopia, there would be far fewer moral dilemmas, so we wouldn't care about ethics. If we can't do science, we can't do art, we can't even do morally virtuous actions, what then would be left for us to do? According to Suits, we would play games. We would reintroduce art and science in the form of games. Suits defines the playing of a game as the voluntary attempt to overcome unnecessary obstacles. These obstacles are typically introduced by rules we impose on ourselves. Think of golf. In golf, we adopt the end of getting a ball in a hole, But to make things fun, we impose unnecessary obstacles on our achievement of this goal. We must not simply walk over to the hole and drop the ball in the hole, but we must instead use clubs to get the ball in the hole in as few strokes as possible. In Utopia, we could make many activities into games. Carpentry in the real world is done as a means to an end, having a house. In Utopia, there is no need for this. The computers and robots will instantly build us the house of our dreams, with no need for us to work at it. But someone might make a game of carpentry by setting themselves the goal of constructing a house, but ruling out more efficient means to that end. They would use ancient and rustic tools, like a hammer and a nail, instead of using telepathy and the robots. In the same way, scientific investigation could be brought back as a game. You could simply not avail ourselves of the computer's knowledge, but force ourselves to learn the laws of nature through our own research. Doing science would be much like solving a crossword puzzle or a chess puzzle, which we do for the sheer joy of the challenge. We could find the answers by asking the computers or looking at the solutions to the crosswords, but we choose not to. Now, Suits may exaggerate in saying that in Utopia the only valuable activity left would be game playing, but he makes a good case for a more modest conclusion. In Utopia, playing games would become far more central to most people's lives than it is in the real world. And games would also play a structuring role, allowing us to bring back all sorts of other activities like carpentry and astronomy, but as games. So there you have it, a perfect world that's not boring because we have games. And that, according to Suits, would be the ideal of human existence. But can this really be the ideal of existence? To many, a life filled with nothing more than playing games would be meaningless. Nothing really matters in Utopia, since everyone will be fine regardless of the outcome. There are no stakes in his Utopia. If there is nothing but games, would that be a life worth living? Suits offers a neat answer to this question in the sequel to The Grasshopper, The Return of the Grasshopper. Okay, suppose we insist that diseases, resource scarcity, crime and the rest are necessary for a life worth living. Dealing with these problems means our lives can matter. Whether we succeed will have real consequences. Let's imagine we are presented with two options. We can choose to stay in this imperfect world with all its miseries, or we can move to Utopia, where there is nothing left to do but to play games. If life is only meaningful when there is suffering, then we would probably choose to stay. In that case, we decided to take on unnecessary obstacles, disease, crime and the like, just because we value the kind of activity made possible by those obstacles. But this just is to play a game, at least according to Suits' definition. It's like choosing to climb a mountain. We could take a helicopter, but we don't, precisely because of the difficulty it presents. This is why mountain climbing is a game. Whether we are playing a game depends on our attitude, what Suits calls the illusory attitude. Mountain climbing is a game because the climber's attitude is such that he would not choose to use a helicopter or a transporter from Star Trek, even if one were available. In the same way, if our attitude is that we wouldn't choose to magically go to a world with no scarcity, then we are playing a game in the same sense. We have the illusory attitude towards obstacles too. Obstacles like crime and disease, rather than the obstacle of a mountain to climb, but obstacles all the same. So either we agree with Suits that his utopia, in which we just play games, is the ideal of existence, or we prefer to stay in our non-utopian world, warts and all, but then this means we're literally choosing to make a game of our lives anyway. Either way, Suits prevails, and games provide the ideal of existence. That's a neat argument, isn't it? What do you think? Is Suits right? His idea that in Utopia there would be no art and no morally virtuous actions seems exaggerated. Suits' definition of games as the voluntary attempt to overcome unnecessary obstacles is very famous. The Grasshopper has the form of a Socratic dialogue. It's very easy and fun to read it. And if you're really interested, you can check the sequel, The Return of the Grasshopper, which you can find in a volume on Games, Sport and Play, edited by Thomas Hurka. The links are in the description if you want to check the books, but unfortunately, they are not open access. This video was produced together with Professor Mike Rich. If there is anything about philosophy and games that you're interested in, let us know. I have made one video on Rich's work on how Stoicism can help us deal with the stress in competitive games. You can check it here. Thank you for watching and see you next week.